Needless to say, it gives me great pleasure to speak to you this morning on this topic, developing ethical leadership for a sustainable tomorrow. I am very grateful to the University of Jayewardenepura for giving me this opportunity and also giving the opportunity for Colombo YMBA to be associated with this very important initiative. And I think it's the second time I am associated with this program. So, talking about developing ethical leadership for a sustainable tomorrow is not only timely but also essential, because we are talking about value-based education. And this is an international conference on value-based education held in Sri Lanka. At a time, there is a debate in Sri Lanka about the efficacy of our educational system. Now, developing ethical leadership for a sustainable tomorrow is a very important topic, especially for the youth of Sri Lanka. What do you mean by ethics? Ethics, in general sense, is about right and wrong, good and bad, what is beneficial, what is non-beneficial. And this concept of ethics has very wide meaning. And in Buddhism, concept of ethics, in Buddhist ethics, is enunciated in 5 precepts, Panchasila, and I saw several papers to be presented today, later in the day, based on Buddhist ethics. And ethics or precepts is not something that is limited or unique to Buddhism. And ethics is a very important concept in Catholicism, in Islam and Hinduism, Jainism and all other religions. Now, first and foremost, when we act, professors spoke about acting through mind or mind preceding action. We must always ask ourselves whether what I am going to do is going to be beneficial to me and beneficial to others. Is it beneficial to me and it's going to be non-beneficial to others? And if it is beneficial to me and beneficial to others only, we should either act bodily or verbally. That is the concept of ethics. And whatever you do, if you are ethical, should support compassion. It should also support justice and also truth. And the question is whether when we talk about ethics, when we talk about ethical beings, it's not about whether you think yourself to be ethical. The way I describe an ethical person is God should be able to trust you. If God cannot trust you, that means you are not ethical. If you are ethical, you must be sure, you must be confident that God can trust you. That is the yardstick for being ethical, in my opinion. And it's a universal concept because we all have some relationship with God in different ways. Now, leadership. Talking about leadership is about going together. Leadership in today's context, in the today's world context, means overpowering, powering over people, maybe abuse of power. How do you take over territories? How do you affect lives of people? That is the context in which we talk about leadership in the world today. That is why Professor Zenia, in her speech, spoke about the unfortunate war she faced in her livelihood or in her childhood, the Bosnian War, where Bosnia, Croatia and Serbia were involved, Professor. And many lives were lost until NATO intervened. And that is why probably you also left the country for New Zealand. So when we, in our context also, in Sri Lankan context also, when we talk about leadership, the first thing that comes to our mind is powering over people, civil conflicts. We talk about powering over people, civil conflicts, abuse of power, misuse of power. Those are the things that are associated with leadership in our context. But leadership is about going together, giving people inspiration, guiding people, challenging people, helping people to reach a common destination. That is leadership. Leadership should not be taken in the context of authority and power. Because what is happening today is that everywhere, every part of the world, there are conflicts. Why? Because people in power likes to show that they are in power, they have power, they are in charge. But that is not about leadership. Leadership should be always guiding people, inspiring people, helping people, challenging people to reach a particular destination. And it's all about creating an enabling environment for the generations to prosper. It's about creating an enabling environment for equal sharing of resources, creating equal opportunity, hearing the voice of the people, building democratic societies. Professor Zenia spoke about a little capitalism and socialism, but we must also remember that socialist systems cannot prosper in democratic societies. It is very difficult for socialism to take root in a democratic society. Democratic societies are mostly capitalistic. Capitalistic does not mean exploiting resources to make oneself rich. Capitalism essentially is providing equal opportunity for people to create wealth, create value. And that is the essence of capitalist world. And leadership in a capitalist world is not about creating money for oneself, but creating equal opportunity, giving equal opportunities for the youth of the country and the people of the country to create wealth so that they can look after their own well-being. And that is the leadership we are talking about. And essentially, ethical leadership is about giving people proper direction to reach a proper destination that is beneficial to the country and the society. And when you give proper direction, only there can be alignment. People get aligned when there is proper direction. When there is no direction, there is no alignment. People go in different directions. There should be proper direction. Giving direction is also part of leadership. And when you have direction, when you have people's alignment, you have commitment of the people. People are committed to the leadership only if there is direction and alignment. Now, that is something we need to understand. Now, when we talk about the leadership in our country for the past 30-40 years, what we have seen is leadership not really interested in creating value, creating proper value. Because the youth in this country especially think that leadership is about authority and power. It is not about authority and power. It's about empowering people. That is what the essence of the idea of leadership that should get embedded in the youth mind. Otherwise, they misunderstand leadership. They try to get into leadership or leadership positions thinking that the purpose of leadership is overpowering. Purpose of leadership is abuse of power. That is why in countries like Sri Lanka, in Asian countries, a lot of people tend to think leaders have certain leeway to misuse power. In our country, we have seen that when people misuse power, sometimes people come and say he is our leader and he is entitled to misuse power. He is entitled to probably steal. He is entitled to lie because he is the leader. That's a wrong concept we have seen developing in our own country because we have not developed ethical leadership. Ethical leadership, as I always say, is about creating a leader who can be trusted by God. If the God cannot trust you, that means you are not a good leader. Now, when you talk about sustainability, what is sustainability? You need ethical leadership for creating sustainability. Sustainability can be environmental, it could be economical, or it could be social. Sustainability to me is meeting our demands without compromising. I stress the word, without compromising future generations' ability to meet theirs. That is sustainability. We meet our demands without compromising future generations' ability to meet theirs. That is sustainability. And sustainability is economical, it's social, and also political. Political sustainability is also important for a society to prosper. Now, if you look at the countries that are affected by conflicts, the underlying principle is that in those countries, the political establishment has not functioned properly. In Sri Lanka, it is the same thing that has happened because we had a 33-year war, professor, and we are a torn society. We are a sharply divided society. Why? Because we did not create ethical leadership in this country that looked after everybody as the leader's children, equal children. That is why we could not create a society that has developed in a cohesive and a very coherent manner. That is because we did not create that ethical leadership. Because in your university song, there is the idea that you should speak up for the right thing. You should stand up for the right thing. Speak against injustice. Speak for justice. And how many university students get this idea, the idea of the theme song, embedded in their life, in their mind? Because the university students' purpose of university education is to equip the student, give the ability to the student to stand up for the right thing, speak up for the right thing. If you cannot stand up and if you cannot speak up for the right thing, that means you are not ethical. Because you don't speak up for the right thing because you think that itself will affect your ability to prosper. And you try to tag along. That is not ethics. So these are the values you should inculcate in these young children, young undergraduates. Otherwise, when they come out of the university without these values, they try to go with the flow without creating the value for the society that the society needs. So that is the most important thing we need to understand when we talk about creating ethical leadership or developing ethical leadership for sustainable tomorrow. Now, leadership also should have certain qualities. Leader always should have integrity. He should be scrupulously honest. If you are not an honest leader, you cannot be a true leader. People will not look up to you. And then compassion. Compassion is so important in our world, in this capitalist world, because there are vulnerable sections of the society. And you need to have compassion to look after that vulnerable section of the society. If you don't look after the vulnerable section of the society, that society cannot build harmony. Because according to Buddhism also, Venerable Sir, all social problems are rooted in poverty. So unless leadership is ethical and unless leadership is willing to give equal opportunities to people, provide economic resources, distribute economic resources equally to people, that society cannot prosper economically. There will always be poverty, abject poverty in societies if the leadership is not willing to provide equal opportunities. Provision of equal opportunity will come with ethics, and ethics come with religion. It could be Buddhism, it could be Islam, it could be Catholicism, it could be Hinduism, it could be Jainism. Always ethics come with religion. And leadership cannot be ethical unless he has certain religious values. That is something you need to understand. Now, ethical leadership, I saw in your papers also, papers talk about Panchasila, 5 precepts. Now, we have to ask ourselves, when we elect leaders, do we consider these leaders' ethical background? Whether they kill or cause to kill, whether they steal or cause to steal, whether they lie or cause to lie. These are values we need to consider in electing leaders. Because university students are not only the future of this country, they are the change makers. Because the future is a result of what we do today. What we do at present will bring us the future. If you are not ready to face the future, you are not ready to make a change today. You can't expect a good future to come. You have to create that future. To create that future, you have to act today. And in society, the foundation is the political establishment. The walls are the economic establishment. And the roof is the ethical society. So, unless the youth of this country, youth of the world, are taking progressive steps, unless they are taking progressive steps to establish ethical political establishments, their future will not change. We will not bring about a desirable future unless we are willing to make that change at the political establishment level. Political establishment level, making that change means electing the ablest person in that society as the leader. You should not forget that, because ethics start there. You have to elect the ablest person or the most able person as the leader of that country. And that is the basic value of leadership enunciated in Buddhism. Electing the ablest leader, ablest person of the society should be elected as the leader. Not the most popular, not the chest thumping people that needs to be elected as leaders. So what I wish to leave with you is that you should not take yourself as the leaders of the country, leaders of the nation, unless you are willing to make that change. Because you are not only the future generation, but you are the change makers. You are the present change makers of this country. You are the present change makers of this world. So you should come forward to make that desirable change that will take our country forward, that will take the world forward. And those are the basic values. Through this kind of conferences, you should give the students and you should propagate these values. Only if you propagate these values, we can make a university, we can make the university a better place. We can make the society a better place. We can make the country a better place. Thank you very much for this valuable opportunity.
Super singing.